Thank you, Catherine. I'll hand over back to you now.
Thank you, Lasse. Yeah, that's definitely something to work towards, is so we don't have to run the program anymore and have people cleaning up anything anymore. So I'll kick off the discussion with our sponsors and the panelists by asking a question for each of them to answer in turn. And I'll start with Loblaw and Alain. So as a major sponsor of the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, it's obvious you believe in the program's mission to inspire Canadians to keep our shorelines free of litter. But can you tell us a little bit more about why it's important to use a company and how this aligns with your sustainability priorities and initiatives?
Yeah, no, for sure. And thanks for having me, Catherine. I mean, Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup is one of the original programs for us, and is actually is one of our favorites. We're not shy to say that, although we love all of our program children equally, of course. And it has its roots in some of our earliest actions as it related to waste, which is a big part of what we're trying to eliminate for us, and is one of the keynotes of our overall sustainability approach. And it was born at the same time, just about, it's over a decade now that we've been partnering with Oceanwise and WWF with the implementation of our 5-cent charge for plastic bags, which was a revolutionary idea at the time, and was tremendously successful. We, upon applying a 5-cent charge for each one of our takeout bags, we reduced the amount of plastic bags from our stores by actually 70%. And now, over a decade later, we've eliminated more than 13 billion plastic bags from the environment by virtue of that one small action. And that sort of small action was really, why things like Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup and, the former National Sweater Day were things that we really got excited about, things that Canadians could really take hold of, do in their own time with their family or with their colleagues to just make a meaningful difference in their communities. And that kind of plugs back into just our overall perspective on all things sustainability and, quite frankly, all things corporate social responsibility for Loblaw, which is, how can we use the size and scope of our business and the types of things that we're involved in to really make meaningful change. And, just like the dream is a day when we don't need to go clean up anymore, I think the dream just before that dream is the idea of if we could somehow engage or convince the 17 million Canadians that go through one of our stores every week to wander down to the creek or to the ocean to spend some time cleaning it up. I think we would move pretty quickly along the spectrum towards that dream scenario. So that's a little bit. I could do 2 hours on the wonders of Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, but I'll pause there and hand it off.
That's great. And certainly a good tie-in with the plastic bag initiative for sure. So maybe we'll hear from Ron about Coca-Cola a little bit, and why it's important to use a company to sponsor the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup and how it aligns with some of your sustainability priorities and initiatives.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks again for having us. I guess the way I would frame it is, the way we do things at Coca-Cola is we like to set targets for ourselves, and we like to set goals for ourselves, and our sustainability priorities are no different. So we've got sustainability goals around water, around climate, and around packaging, and others, of course. And I'll use the water example. We set ourselves a goal to be 100% water neutral by 2020. And, at the time when we had set that goal, we didn't really know how we were going to get there. We just knew that that was important for us because we're a big water, consumer of water. And our beverages are made up of 90+% water, 95% plus water. And so, through partnerships with WWF, through other partnerships, we achieved water neutrality in Canada in 2018, 2 years early, and that's something that for us is going to continue on, and it's now formed part of our 2030 goals, which is to maintain that water neutrality and of course to do other things. But it's how we look at our sustainability goals around climate. We've set ourselves a goal of 25% absolute reduction in our climate output. So, and that's aligned with the science-based target initiatives, which was part of the Paris Agreement. And so that's how we're looking at our climate targets over the next 10 or so years. And then around packaging, we set ourselves a goal to collect 100% of the packaging that we put in the market by 2030. And at the time, again, when we set that, we didn't really have a clear way in which we were going to go after that, but we felt it was important. We knew that it was important to, to the world, and so it's us doing our part as part of the plastic waste problem. And so also as part of that, we are, our goal is to have 50% recycled content in our packaging by 2030, and to make sure that 100% of our packaging is fully recyclable. And so as that relates to the shoreline cleanup, I think, this has been an incredible partnership for us. We've been at this with you guys for over 10 years now, and we recognize that there is a plastic waste problem, and that we have a role to play in that, and that it's unfortunate that some of our packaging ends up in waterways and in places that it shouldn't. And so for us, this partnership is critical in helping to drive awareness, helping to ensure that it's one part of a broader multitude of tools and solutions that need to be brought forward, and investments and education. And so for us, this has been a tremendous partnership in helping to achieve some of those goals for us here in Canada, and we try to amplify that in everything we do globally as well.
That's great. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, certainly some big goals, and the water work you've done has been pretty incredible as well. So congratulations. So let's turn it over to Leonard and hear from O'Neill. Some obvious connections there to the ocean, but I would love to hear from you a little bit about why it's important for your company to support the program, and how it aligns with your bigger sustainability initiatives and priorities.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us. We're a new sponsor to this program, but we're very proud to be contributing as best we can. O'Neill as a brand has always been about water. Our tagline is first name in the water. We feel the oceans not only sustain our lives, but in our case, it's where we play. The sports we're involved with as a company, surfing, paddleboarding, wakeboarding, they're all centered around clean water and clean oceans. So we feel they just need to be protected. Even the winter sports we are connected to, skiing, snowboarding, we couldn't enjoy them without water, because snow is frozen water after all. All the things we love as a brand just cease to exist if we don't have clean oceans and clean sources of water around us. And the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup is, for us, it's all about protecting our playground. And it's just a natural fit with our beliefs and our values. We've been around for 70 years. We wanted to send a message to get involved and do something and go one step further. And it's about letting people know we care about where we live, and there's more to our company than just making clothes. Our company, our employees, our customers, they all want to contribute to a more sustainable world. And we've been increasingly shifting our products towards sustainable fabrics and, environmentally responsible products. And we created what we call the O'Neill Blue campaign. It's our global initiative about environmental responsibility, but we want it to be action-oriented as well. And the Shoreline Cleanup allows us to align our brand's roots and our sustainable direction with real-life, events in the right direction. So we see it as a collective effort, people working together. By supporting organizations like OceanWise, we're hoping to tell our story to a larger audience, motivate people to take action. If our involvement in our programs encourage change, then we achieve something good for ourselves, our customers, and for all the communities where we live. And we're happy to support it as best we can. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Leonard. Definitely some obvious and some great connections there with your brand. So I'm going to ask Ron this next question, and specifically your World Without Waste program, Plastics Out of Nature, through supporting the shoreline cleanup. Talk a little bit more about that as being kind of one vision. You mentioned there's a lot of different angles of what you're working on. So can you talk a little bit more about what you're working on to make sure that the litter doesn't end up in the shorelines in the first place?
Sure. So, what we call our World Without Waste strategy is really about rethinking our packaging design, and rethinking collection. And if we believe that if we can achieve our goals under our World Without Waste strategy, we will help to be part of the creation of a true circular economy for our plastic packaging, so that it doesn't end up in waterways. Let me just level set for a second, because I think one important sort of myth that I wanted to sort of address is, in Canada, I believe it's today it's probably 11 or so % of plastics in Canada are recycled. And in contrast to that, 75% of beverage containers are recycled in Canada, and that is a huge difference. And the reason for that is our packaging has value. So when you go to recycle our material and you throw it in the blue box, the commodity market on the back end, the secondary markets, et cetera, where you sell that material to create recycled content, PET has value, plastic has value, and so it gets recycled at a much higher rate than some other plastics that we may find in the environment that don't get recycled. And for us, it's not just about collecting the material; it's about making sure that it's recycled too, and recycled at a high rate. And so part of this strategy for us is around collection. So how do we need to have responsibility to collect our material. And so part of that is to work with provinces, work with our industry partners to expand blue box programs, to expand deposit programs where they exist in Ontario, and do that work to ensure that our packaging is collected and be able to own that package at the end of the day and turn it back into recycled content. We also have a responsibility, we feel, to ensure that as we're bringing new packaging onto the market, that packaging is 100% recyclable. And so that anything that you buy as a consumer from Coca-Cola is material that you can feel good about putting in the blue box, and that material will be recycled and turned into recycled content. And then the final piece of what we're trying to do is really around rethinking the design of our packaging altogether. And so that's really about how do we increase recycled content in our packaging? How do we rethink packaging altogether? So we have things like freestyle machines or these fountain machines that actually don't require packaging. In theory, you can bring your own cup to that. And so we're looking at different and innovative ways with RFID chips to be able to allow people to use reusable cups, and so that we reduce our footprint on our packaging overall in the community. And so if we take all of those things into account together around collecting, around redesigning our packaging, and then the partnership that we're working on with you, in addition to other things that we need to do to educate consumers, to educate Canadians, that if they simply put our packaging in a recycling bin, good things will happen to it. And that might be different for other packaging materials, but for beverage containers, if you put that in a blue box, it will get recycled, and we can reuse that material. And so we're trying to think about all of those different factors together to be able to create circularity in the economy.
That's great. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, we're definitely hearing a lot about the circular economy lately, and its importance in creating a world without waste. So really important points. So the next question I have is for Alain, and can you tell us more about how you engage your employees in the program? As one of Canada's biggest employers, you certainly have a lot of employees, and so how do you engage them in this program, and why is it important that your support goes beyond, the financial sponsorship contribution?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That's a great question. I mean, as I mentioned, it's a favorite of mine as someone that helps coordinate these types of programs to help engage our colleagues, and it's a favorite of mine for totally selfish reasons. This is the time of year I usually bring my growing family down to Cherry Beach for the cleanup there with everyone, and I'll miss that. I've missed that opportunity so far. It's an amazing way, to teach kids, quite frankly, about the impact waste has on their community and on the environment, and teach some pretty important lessons. And that ability to sort of get your hands dirty in a very real sense in your own backyard and make a practical difference where you live is why the program works so tremendously well for a business like ours. We, as you mentioned, we have 200,000 people that work for our business, basically in every town across the country. And sometimes connecting with them is really, really challenging. Then the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup just gives us the ability, by virtue of its just the way it's built, that it can happen anywhere, and it's pretty easy to get out there and make a difference, and it has proven to be tremendously popular with our colleagues. I think for all the reasons I just cited, and also I think even more so for a retail business like ours. I mean, in the retail business is very much a sort of get her done type of in culture, and the shoreline cleanup is just very much that. It is here is a creek, it is dirty, you go spend 2 hours on that creek is clean, and that very much appeals to the types of folks that are drawn to work in retail. So it has been an amazing way for our colleagues to engage. They can see the difference they make in their community, and it's a great way for us to connect with them.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty powerful to go and feed your information into the national kind of statistics and the ones that Lasse was reading earlier in terms of how much has been done cumulatively over the years. It's pretty impressive and definitely makes a big difference. So my next question is for Leonard, and as a brand with obvious deep connections to the oceans, as you already outlined, why is it important for you to encourage other ocean lovers to lend a helping hand to clean our shorelines?
Well, we definitely have a deep connection to the ocean. It goes back to our founder, Jack O'Neill. He wasn't only a pioneer of surfing, but he was always a committed advocate for the ocean. 30 years ago, he started the O'Neill Odyssey, and it started just teaching his kids about, protecting the ocean, and expanded to high schools in his local neighborhood. And it's just become, embedded in the DNA of our brand from day one. And the message is, start small and you don't know where it leads. And we feel that way today. We're only one small voice, but we can't do it ourselves. We need other ocean lovers and fellow citizens to join, take action, and spread our message. And then we could start a movement and maybe reach that goal when it's no longer necessary. For us, we're sports enthusiasts. We get very excited about the idea of spending a day surfing or snowboarding. And there's nothing that's a greater turnoff for us than getting all geared up and heading out to the beach and finding plastic bottles and cigarette butts and other garbage on our shorelines. So we're very passionate about the need of our communities to lend a helping hand. Our company was started with a wetsuit. It was designed to protect people from cold ocean water so they can pursue their passions. But we feel now it's the oceans that need protecting. And Jack O'Neill actually said, the ocean is alive. We need to take care of it. We must all work together and protect our playground. And that's true now, more than ever. We feel our role is to get as many of the 35 million people living in this country to get involved, even in a small way. And then we can have a huge impact on our oceans and hopefully keep them healthy and clean forever.
Thank you. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've all seen those iconic photos of ocean animals surrounded by plastic, or surfers taking photos with waste all around them. We need to do a better job with that for sure. So I'd encourage people, this is the end of our kind of formal question and answer period. I'd encourage people to send in some questions on the Q&A or chat sections of your of your screen. One kind of comment that has come in, and that could be a good question, and I'll ask Alen, just in terms of the times that we're in COVID and the increased use of plastic. The comment mentioned plastic bags, but I'm sure you're seeing the rise of other plastic. Talk a little bit about what the conversation is around that and kind of balancing safety and kind of measures around the pandemic with increased use of plastics and single-use throwaway plastics that you're facing at Loblaw.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, there's no doubt, unfortunately, a byproduct of what is already a pretty unfortunate situation has been increased use of plastics, sort of single-use waste, frankly, whether it be masks or increased use of bags. I mean, in our case, and I think across the retail sector, there's been a proliferation of plastic bags for health and safety reasons, and so we've had to do things like remove the fee. We had temporarily removed the plastic bag fee that I mentioned earlier. It's back on now, but and a lot of public health units and provinces were directing us to no longer take reusable bags. So some real operational constraints on some pretty long established programs that we had to try and sort of rein those types of plastic uses in. So so challenging, obviously, in a year of challenges, but we are obviously hopeful that we'll get back to normal and back to sort of the positive trend, and for reasons beyond single use, obviously, but we're not blind to it, and obviously hoping the trend changes back soon.
That's great, thank you. I'm going to actually ask Lasse a question, put you on the spot a little bit. I know OceanWise is doing a lot of great research and other work that's related. So wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about some of the research and innovation and things that are kind of coming up that are really cool around these topics and kind of saving the oceans and the challenges that Leonard mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we're just about to launch in the next couple of months a new program called Plastics Free Oceans. And it's building on the work we've been doing with citizens in our Plastic-Wise program and the work we are doing with partners in the apparel industry around microfibers. So you'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised because you're an intelligent audience, that if you buy a Canadian proof jacket, which would be a high-tech, say Gore-Tex or another membrane jacket, and you wash it, you would shed more plastics into the ocean than the average Canadian, simply because of the qualities of the materials. We're now working with the apparel industries, with the Patagonias and the Arctics of the world, to see how can we help innovate in terms of better materials, who continue to allow us to go out and enjoy the Canadian nature, which is wet and rainy and cold, at least sometimes, and continue to wash our clothes like mother and father told us, but not polluting as much as we do today with our high-tech gear. We're also looking to extend our Plastic-Wise program and combine it with the OceanWise Seafood program. There's a lot of plastic, single-use plastic used in the fishing industry, from the boat all the way into the restaurant. What can we do to drive change in that chain of commodities? And then, of course, one of our successes during COVID-19 is our face masks. They're now a partnership with the local soccer club, the Vancouver Whitecaps, and as you might know, we also have Canada's only marine mammal rescue center, where we do rescue animals from being trapped in plastics, but we also rescue animals who are in a bad situation for other reasons. So one of our best rescues this year has been a little otter, Joey, a very popular guy. He raises around $1,000 a day through our webcam, and we have coming up very soon the face mask of the year, the Joey mask. So I mean, from small things to big things, from driving deep change in the apparel industry, from working with the microfiber lab, and to very cool face masks. I mean, face mask is obviously part of fashion now, and you want to wear a Joey mask. And so keep your eyes on what's coming up in the next couple of months.
Very cool. I really want to see what that design looks like now.
You will
Definitely
love
have to keep an eye for that. So a few other great questions have come in here in the meantime. So one question is, what about other companies? So the 3 companies and the great things you're doing and explained here today, but do you see that influencing other companies? And this question says specifically Nestle, but other companies in your sector. How do you see that, or are you seeing that already? I don't know, maybe Ron or Alain want to tackle that.
I'm happy to give it a shot. I to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I think what I tend to sort of see in out there is every company is taking an approach, and I think that regardless of the approach, the simple fact that companies are taking action, and if that action is genuine action, then I think we're working towards the solution, whatever the solution is, which is plastic ending up where it's supposed to end up and not in the environment. And so I think creating the momentum and seeing other companies getting involved and seeing other companies do this kind of work with the shoreline cleanup, the more profile, the more momentum that programs like this get, I think the more attention they can grab and cause other organizations to get involved as well. And I think the way in which this program has been created, which is really around how to how to get employees engaged, how to get more people engaged, and how to really scale this in a way that is interesting. I think that's what's really exciting about the shoreline cleanup. And as we see more employees getting engaged, more employees talking about this, I mean, one of the things that I often think about as an employee of Coca-Cola and somebody who's responsible for communications as well is, our employees need to feel proud of the place they work, and they need to they need to look at the actions that their company is taking, and those actions need to align with their core values. And so programs like this for us help to generate a lot of excitement internally within our virtual 4 walls these days. And they become advocates, and they're out there talking about these kinds of programs and the way in which their company is engaged in these types of programs. And I think that has ripple effects as well. So I think for me, continuing to do the right thing genuinely is important. And I think that over time, as we scale and as more attention is drawn to programs like this one, more companies will get involved. And it may not be this specifically, but it may be in their own way, with other cleanups, with other partners. But I think if they're all moving in the right direction, that to me is a positive sign.
Definitely, that's a good way. And I mean, there's so much pressure from employees, from customers, from everyone these days that I think everyone's got to get involved and try to do better in some way, right? Alain, did you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I think Ron did a great job.
Okay, good. So you have a few questions just a bit on alternative kind of packaging. One talks about glass and kind of what would be the barriers to move to glass that would in some cases maybe have a deposit and would be more reusable. And then for Alain as well, kind of switching to potentially using more paper bags as opposed to plastic. And I know those are kind of complicated issues when you look and all of those things use resources and some are heavier products. But maybe if each of you can talk a little bit, Ron and Alain, a little bit about kind of what you think about when you think about which packaging to use and which materials.
Well, here, let me go first, Ron. I'll give you time to think. Look, I think there's a few things in there. I think we, getting outside the shoreline cleanup and just into terms of just generally how we're looking at plastics and packaging in our stores, there's just a tremendous amount of work going on, both as us at Loblaw and what we can do inside our own 4 walls, but also some of this broader industry conversation, which Ron talked on, and there's a lot of really, I think, cool, important work going on there that I'm optimistic about. But in terms of Loblaw, just on the paper bag, we've been exploring the bag versus the paper bag for some time, and I think the short answer is we've been warned of the broader environmental footprint of a paper bag versus plastic, and that shifting entirely to paper is not necessarily an environmental slam dunk. So our preference has been trying to get customers to reusable, which is a trickier switch, and we've been on that journey for quite some time. So that's ongoing. In terms of other things, just generally, just while I have the mic and I hand it back to Ron, on packaging, we're looking at a lot of different potential solutions from reusable. So we're partnering with an organization called Loop to pilot basically a milkman type approach for packaging in Canada. So the concept being that you would buy your decadent chocolate chip cookie in a reusable tin, and once you are done with it, you put it out on your curb, and someone will come pick it up and bring you back a full tin of cookies, and then that tin you put on the curb is then cleaned and reused. And that's something that's going to come next year, and I think I'm super curious to see how that lands with customers. And then just on, that's a little less exciting, but probably more, maybe more impactful long term, is packaging decisions. So we have shifted, for example, all of our mushroom tills in our grocery stores from what used to be black plastic to caramel, because the recycling sorting machines can actually see caramel versus black, and they then become far more recyclable on top of having far more recycled content. And so those type of really kind of practical product level changes are happening throughout our business. It's hard, slogging work, but with some really good environmental payoffs.
I think there's a lot in what Alain said there as well, and to me, it's a bit of a recognition that companies like ours aren't, we don't sort of sit around and say, hey, what organization can we partner with to make us seem like we're taking all the right actions? And I think Leonard mentioned it as well. I mean, there's so much work that's being done around sustainable materials, and from an industry perspective, one example that I might just give is, and I know this isn't related to the question that was asked to me, Catherine, so sorry, but there's a lot of work happening in Ontario at the moment, and that work is around giving industry more responsibility over the cost of recycling, to take ownership and to take accountability for increasing recycling rates in Ontario, as one example. And part of that is to say, in one jurisdiction, you can recycle a coffee cup. In another jurisdiction, in the jurisdiction next door, you can't. And so, recycling in general has sort of gotten a bit of a bad rap. And I think what industry is coming together to do now is to say, how can we start to bring some consistency to the process? How can we start to make the right investments on the back end so that that cup that you have is actually recyclable no matter where you are? That black plastic can be converted to other materials, like Alain mentioned, so that the sorters in the recycling facilities can actually pick them up and actually recycle them and get them to the place that they need to get to. And so there is so much work happening in the back end that is not sexy, that is not worth talking about, and doesn't get people excited, but it is the real work that is really helping us to increase recycling rates overall and ensure that that those things don't end up in places where they shouldn't, and that they have markets. And so I'll just say that to your question originally, Catherine, around glass, we get this all the time, and the question is, why isn't Coke in more glass bottles? Because it's environmentally friendly. And one of the things that for us is problematic around glass is there is a place for glass. It's a premiumized product. It costs a little bit more. There's a different sort of strategy for how you sell glass, Coke in a glass bottle. But we don't sell much of it. And the reality is, glass is it's a heavier material, and it's got a higher carbon footprint. And there are a number of challenges with it when it does get sent to a recycling facility, glass breaks. And so people that have to handle glass on the back end, there are a lot of occupational hazards related to using glass. And so the one thing that we try to balance all the time is we originally moved to PET many years ago because it was a lighter material, because it used less resources to manufacture, and because it was a more environmentally friendly material. And glass being heavy and using more carbon, we want to make sure that we're not solving the plastic issue while simultaneously creating more of a carbon footprint issue for ourselves. And so we've got to always figure out what that balance is. But that's a little bit about why we are, we have the packaging mix that we have today, which includes less plastic than it used to.
That's right. Gives some good insights into the back end and how complicated this topic is, for sure. So switching gears a little bit to, I'd like to ask Leonard a question from O'Neill's perspective. And you talked a little bit about coming on as a new sponsor and the thought process for that. There's a question around kind of the benefits of sponsoring the program that the sponsors are getting. So if you could expand a little bit on that. And if you have any advice, even for other companies who are interested in getting their employees involved or sponsoring the program to kind of do good and clean up the oceans or something similar even.
Experience.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. For us, it's been a fantastic experience. I guess we're very impressed with the organization we're working with, OceanWise and the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, and that makes all the difference in the world. You know, our staff, our employees, they're very motivated to participate in anything connected to these programs, and we feel it's just important from all respects about giving back to our community as well as doing the right things for our customers and our employees. But one of the real benefits is just from the experience we feel you learn to look at the world in a new way, and you learn to think outside the box, and you look at some of the things that you take for granted forever, that maybe there's a better way to do it. And, until we got more involved with you guys, we just didn't put enough attention to it. And, we're not going to accomplish them all, but, you start looking under the hood and, we've done some of the basic things. Our tags are all recycled, and, we have a couple stores and we don't use plastic bags in those locations. But recently the topic came up about, our product is clothing. It ships from all over the world. It gets dirty, it gets damaged in transit. And it's every single thing we sell is in a plastic bag, one item at a time. And as soon as those items hit a store, the plastic is basically discarded and it's hung up at that location. And, we're just a small company, and we go through millions and millions of products that are put in a plastic bag every year. And someone came up with the idea, just by being involved in this, that maybe we can put, a carton that has maybe 72 t-shirts in it and put all 72 t-shirts in one bag and it's still protected. And, in that way, we're using one bag instead of 72. And we're looking at ways of working with our customers and our vendors about making that work. And look, it's just beneficial, and we think it's great that we can work with you guys. And it's been a really great experience for us. So we're proud to be part of it.
That's great. Yeah, lots of innovation and change that can happen in the athletic clothing industry, for sure. And that kind of answers one of the other questions here, was that about how the athletic clothing industry can better support the oceans, especially with an increase in online purchasing. Are there better ways to ship packaging and shipping clothing? Have you tackled that question yet, or is it kind of exploded so fast the past few months that you haven't had time to react yet?
Look, it's actually still a small part of our business, and it's not, We could definitely, get the plastic out of it, but we're switching to cardboard. We're not sure that's the best, and we really have to keep the product clean and protected when it gets to the customer. But as the scale of that business grows, there's all kinds of innovations I'm sure we can come up with, and we'll do our best to do a better job.
That's great. We'll definitely keep an eye out for those. So this one question I think maybe is one for Lasse. I'm not sure if it's something that we can gather yet from the research and statistics, but the question is how much COVID has contributed towards a reduction in shoreline litter, keeping in mind fewer boats, ships, fewer people getting out of home. I wonder if we can tell yet if we've got a reduction in the litter, or because of increased use of things like PPE and masks, there might even be more out there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Lasse?
As far as I know, we don't have any data on that. I might be somebody on my team is better informed than I am, but we don't know that. But I think it is important. I love these kind of dialogues about the practicalities, the 72 T-shirts in one plastic bag, and the shift of the mushroom packaging from black to caramel. That's the kind of work that needs to be happening. At the same time as we're making progress and by doing many small things. And it's awesome that we are doing. We need to keep our eye on what's actually going on in the big scheme of things. And the production of primary plastic is growing exponentially as we speak. So as much as we're doing great in these partnerships here, and we should continue, we need to ask ourselves, how can we do even more? Because as good as this is, we're not meeting the challenges that we're facing through the increased production of primary plastic, and recycling is awesome. Everybody needs to do it. It's not going to be enough. We need to find a way to tackle these challenges also upstreams, and by keeping an eye on the primary production of plastics, we have a reference point, and that's an important one. That I think that's also motivating people. Keeping the beaches clean is critical and very important, but we also need to tackle the root causes here. Both recycling and beach cleaning is fundamentally important, and it's a really good way to engage citizens. But we need to find solutions like the 72 T-shirts in one plastic bag, and our mushrooms coming in caramel packaging, and our Coke is in our bodies through not a single-use cup, but maybe one that we can bring in and maybe subscribe to or recycle. This kind of innovation is going to be critical. So I really love these kind of dialogues. And sorry, I was taking us a little bit sideways because I didn't know the answer to your question.
No, that's great. It's true. I mean, it kind of is a great way to sum up the conversation. We're just a few minutes to the top of the hour here, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up. And thank you everyone for your great questions. A huge thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. I hope everyone learned something, and please go out and clean a shoreline over the next few weeks before it gets too cold, at least in certain parts of the country. But yeah, go out there and do it in a safe way. There's lots of guidance on the website on how to do that. And again, a huge round of applause for our sponsors who helped make this program possible. And thanks for sharing your insights today.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Thank you.